Hi everyone, I'm Harv, Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and this is Stuff That Matters Now. Hey, welcome back everybody. It is a beautiful day here. I'm just outside of Martinborough and I am interviewing Jannine Rickards, which I am very excited about because Jannine is pretty unique, and we have got a glass of wine while we're making this, which is a bit naughty, but Jannine is a winemaker with a really interesting, different label, and this podcast is, as I said, it's going to be unique. So, welcome, Jannine.
Thank you, Harv. Nice to be here. Nice to have you here.
And thank you for agreeing to this. Jannine, I am really intrigued with this interview because you're one of the few Māori winemakers in New Zealand, and you've also got a real passion for food, which I'm really interested to dig into, and for hunting. And I really want to dig into that too. So, Jannine, who are you?
Who am I? I guess I've always sort of grown up thinking that I'm a Kiwi kid, and I grew up on a farm with a loving family who are still there, 2 hardworking parents and 2 siblings. They all still live up near the Coromandel in the Firth of Thames where the farm was, and so I sort of whakapapa back to that. But I am in the process of learning more about my family history and embarking on a bit of a journey up north with my mum later in the year to go through all the knowledge that she has about the first settlers that came out and, where everyone's sort of buried and old family homesteads and things like that. So I'm quite excited to learn a bit more about that in detail. But I descend from Ngāpui in Hokianga and Ngāi near Tauranga and Aotearoa. I'm Scots and Irish, so I am a blend, but in recent times I've been connecting back to, I've been trying to learn some te reo Māori, and through that process, the first thing you sort of delve into is tikanga and protocols, and then from there, you learn whakatauki, so you're learning proverbs, and there's a whole connection beyond just learning how to speak a language that has really drawn me in. And so now I live in the Wairarapa with my partner Mick and our 3 pig hunting dogs, and we've got a small property on the edge of Martinborough here, and I'm juggling life, my own small business, and trying to find some balance. I've got a good community of friends in the region and throughout the country from working in wine and working in various regions. So I feel very connected to a wide range of people. But now I'm putting my roots down, I guess you'd say, in the Wairarapa. I feel very connected to the land there. That's where I learnt to hunt. That's where I've decided to build a home, put my hands in the soil and grow food. And I think that's me. A little bit about who I am. Yeah.
Jannine, what's got you interested in making wine?
I was working in hospitality. I was actually working at a small luxury hotel on the Coromandel and started dating the sous chef. I've always loved food, and anyway, working at this lodge, I had to learn about wine to get onto the dinner service. And I hadn't really grown up with a lot of wine experiences, except for my mum's father had opened beautiful bottles of classics like Cloudy Bay and Te Mate at Christmas. And I remember thinking that, wow, this is pretty special stuff, but not delving into it until I needed to have a knowledge to work front of house. And so I did a course online through EIT, and I guess dating a chef who was quite experienced in the hospitality scene. My sort of eagerness about food and wine and matching dishes, and just like I'm still learning about wine, but it grabbed my attention, and I worked my way up the ranks to actually manage that small restaurant at that lodge eventually. So I fell into wine through that. So I did a few more years in hospitality, and then got the opportunity to work a harvest in Hawke's Bay, and I got hooked. I did a harvest. It was so much fun. It's like action-packed. There's grapes coming in. You're learning so much. And I remember tasting my first bunch of Sauvignon Blanc, going, holy moly, this is incredible. Just packed with flavour. And I worked with some amazing people, and it just grew from there. I worked in that business. I didn't go back to Auckland, where I was working in a small luxury importing food place at that time. I stayed down there. I was pretty much Girl Friday. I was working in the restaurant, the salador, the vineyard, but just to work harvest in the winery. And there's a real energy and buzz, and you know that every season's going to bring a new challenge and going to be very interesting. It's fun. You know, you drink a lot, you work hard. It's like...
It's got a buzz.
It's got a definite buzz and energy.
And I wish I was just looking at your face light up when you're talking about that first harvest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still enjoy harvest. It's probably got a bit, sort of more layers of, complexities to it now, but I still enjoy the challenge because every season, especially with climate change, throws something new at you that you've got to think outside the box. How am I going to deal with this? Or, where I make Huntress is quite a small facility for the fruit that we have in it, so it's a logistic kind of game as well, which throws a good challenge.
Jannine, you talked about it hooked you early on. What was that hook?
I just think that it was quite creative. It expressed seasonality, it's physical, it's fun, and I really liked the flavour and taste of wine. So, it's a beverage that can express a season, a place, house style. It's something that's a living product that will develop in bottle and look different later on with some time, with some rest. I can spend a lot of time over a good glass of wine thinking about it. Not that one so much, it's delicious, but it's gone.
Sorry. And I met you at the Young Winemaker North Island Awards, and I remember the first year I went to that, and I was sitting at the table that evening with the sponsors, of which we were one, and they had this wine tasting competition thing, and just a bit of fun, and you had reds and whites and so forth. And the questions were quite bizarre. What country did the wine come from? What soil? And I'm going, you've got to be joking. And our table, got 95% right. I just held the cards up like I'm just going, I've got no idea. But what was interesting was to see just how into the wines the winemakers were, from tasting the different soils and the different whole range of things, and how much they knew about it. And that it was interesting because that competition that year was at Church Road, but there was no Church Road wine there. There was wines from all around New Zealand and around the world, and everybody's just sitting there sharing and comparing. And I thought, man, this is why this industry is so innovative, because you're always interested in what each other are doing. Yeah,
absolutely. And I love the Wairarapa for that as well, because everyone is a small sort of family-owned kind of business, and they share equipment, they share ideas, they want to work together to make and build the region, which it's got a very strong history anyway of quality, in particular Pinot Noir, but just have that. It's not like competitive. It's we're on the same pathway to do the best with what we've got from the site we've got, and it's all unique. And actually, I was in Hawke's Bay judging at the AMP show 2 weeks ago, and I was lucky enough. A friend of mine from years back in Martinborough was going as well, and he called me up and he's like, "I'm going to take an 05 vintage from 2005, which was my first vintage in Martinborough." And I had one bottle from where I worked at Aotearoa-NZ. And then we fluked it and someone brought an 05 from Dry River. So we had these 3 amazing wines and we've got them lined up and we're like, stop all food, all other wines. We need to look at this. This is incredible. Like, we're talking, because it was a while ago now. It's kind of a bit scary, that whole fact. But yeah, just tasting, let them open up in the glass and just like really look at these wines and appreciate for what they are, and yeah, remembering that season, it's awesome stuff.
As a winemaker, what are you good at?
What am I good at? I think that I can handle working under pressure quite well now. You become kind of strategic and putting what's most urgent first and working through a sort of chaotic kind of day. Things get thrown in the works, I think the saying I'm looking for, and it can all turn to custard very quick. So it's managing that and managing people and the diversity of people in the wine industry. Your team is really essential at an intense time of year. It's full on, and you want to make sure you're looking after everyone so that they can perform to their best and the team's united, because it only takes one bad egg for it to all sort of can fall apart a bit. I've been very lucky, I've worked with many good teams now, but I think that's a strong thing to be able to do as a winemaker, make sure everyone's on the same page and okay.
And what's a fabulous day look like for you as a winemaker? What's the day where you didn't go, that was awesome?
I think I love my job so much that I think that most of the time. But certainly the end of harvest, when everything's safely tucked away and you can just enjoy get all the vineyard crew in and you can have a little sort of long lunch and open some nice bottles and go, good work team, this is awesome. That's, another season done and dusted, and then you start again and you see what the next year's going to bring.
And your brand is called?
Huntress.
Huntress. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it wasn't a well thought out business plan at all. I moved back to the Wairarapa, and friends who have a vineyard called On Giant Shoulders said, Jay, do you want to buy some fruit? We've got some spare Pinot. And I'm like, ooh, that's exciting. That's a good idea. And it's an amazing vineyard, old vines, just a great opportunity. So without any kind of plan...
Just stop there. So that means they had a surplus of grapes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll be still on the vine at that point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Right. And so then they go, we've got the surplus. Do you want to buy them?
Yeah.
And make it into what you want?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, okay.
So I said yes eventually, and then when harvest came, I went in with some friends and we picked my small ton, which is actually quite a bit of wine if you don't have a business plan. So it's 3 barrels and 900 bottles. So
you picked that by hand?
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. And it was a beautiful little ferment. It was quite a challenging year. It was we picked it because we could see there was a cyclone coming and another one after that. So it kind of rained from the day after we picked for most of harvest. So I'm really pleased with that decision, and I think the wine's got a lot of longevity and freshness. I was really happy to have this, but then really had no idea about what I was going to call it and how I was going to sell it, labels, all that jazz. And I was talking to a good friend who I formed a friendship with when I was living in North Canterbury, and she said, well, Jay, you're the Huntress. Huntress is you, just call it Huntress. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. And I'm so pleased that she suggested that, because the brand is really connected to me. Like, I make it and I sell it, and it is an expression of me, like, as well. Because I don't have my own vineyard, so it's, I'm not going to tell that story that most people are telling about.
So where does the name Huntress come from?
I guess just a female hunter, Huntress, like, in terms of...
Tell us about the hunting. I'll be more direct.
Okay.
Tell us about the hunting.
Hunting, well, I mean, I started hunting when I was 30 years old. And I was working for Aotearoa-NZ, and they have this bush block, and I knew that this hunter would go out there. He popped by the winery quite often, and I'd actually been on a couple of hunts with another friend, and then I said to the owner, Clive, I said, do you think you could, ask that Mick the hunter if he'd take me out? And
this is hunting for?
He was mostly pig hunting, but he's also a deer shooter. But yeah, he had pig dogs, and he was keeping the pig population under control.
Yep.
And so, eventually he called me, and I got to go out with him for a weekend. I think I got invited back because I wasn't too much hassle. I didn't whinge. I just, got on with the job and walked around the hill. I can't actually remember if we got a pig or not on that hunt. We probably got a small pig.
It's pretty physical.
Yeah, I was probably too busy trying to breathe to actually, and he just sort of glided through the bush, and it was very calm, very quiet, and then it was all on, and the dogs had a pig, and there was a lot of loud squealing, and I was like, what the hell? This is pretty full on.
And then you've got to run to keep up with the dogs.
Yeah.
I've been pig hunting only half a dozen times, and I was fit when I did it, and I still couldn't get over how poked I was, how quickly, because you're cruising along, nothing's happening, and then it's instant, and the dogs start barking and running and so forth, and you've got to keep up with them. Yeah,
it's intense, and it's a different fitness. Like, Mick's taking out all kinds of fit people, and they struggle with it. So I think you've got to be doing it all the time, and I've not been pig hunting much lately, so just the last 4 weeks in a row I've been out, and seriously got a bit of work to do on the old fitness.
I took a mate out from Auckland. I was living up in Northland at the time, and this guy came up, and he's straight out of Parnell, right? And he came up, and he was keen to go pig hunting, and I'm not a pig hunter's ass, but I was going along with the neighbour. He had the dogs and was all set up, and we just followed him. Anyway, we got a 150-pound bull or something, and we were really happy about this. This was back blocks in Northland, and he's a real estate guy, and he's pretty chatty, sort of. Anyway, fit, and he said, "Yeah, I'm, want to carry the pig back, right?" So he gutted the pig and so forth, and he loaded up and walked back. Now, it was about a 2.5 mile climb back, and it was just a gentle climb, but it was a climb all the way back to the bikes, right? It was steaming hot Northland February day, and the lice started coming out of the pig, and he's locked in with his...
freaking out.
And as I'm watching him, he was sweating so much and was so buggered, he didn't realise that he was covered in lice, right? And I'm just watching it, and it's anyway, he got to a stream, and he was so thirsty, he bent down with the pig to have a drink out of the stream, and the pig flopped forward. I thought he was going to drown. Anyway, the real estate guy, he was as quiet as a mouse. That night, he was absolutely shagged. Knackered.
Yeah.
Man, it was hard work. It was hard work just watching him. Yeah.
It's physical.
Yeah. And what do you love about hunting?
I love that from a busy week I can get out to the bush and it's different. The phone's turned off. You're in amongst nature. I'm very observant of the changes because a lot of the time we might be doing a similar track and you're observing if there's different sign or what's happening around you, what the weather's been through the week, and it's just a next level of kind of mindset, like your mind's clear. I also like the wild pork and the venison in the freezer. I like to know where the meat comes from. I love being able to have the skill set to gut, skin and break down an animal and prepare it so that there's minimal wastage, and share it with friends and family. Like, I think I've been very connected to the food that I eat my whole life, and I'm very lucky for that. But wild meat, it's an abundant resource, and it's doing a good environmental sort of deed, I guess, in terms of keeping numbers down, so that the bush can regenerate. We can get New Zealand, Aotearoa, back to some beautiful native forests maybe one day.
Yeah. And you've talked about, before we started, you talked about this connection to food, right, and where it comes from and so forth. So there's a real passion there as well with the wine, connecting with the food as well.
Definitely. I've always liked to eat, apparently, even from the age of, I was in a high chair. I'd be up early helping my father with his breakfast. So food brings me joy. There's a lot of positive memories of times with friends or family, and just knowing where the hell it comes from. Most people don't have that, and I think it's ridiculous that people can't have that closer connection to what they put in their mouth and what nourishes them. They're reliant on the system where they have to go to the supermarket and they don't know who caught that fish or who grew that vegetable or how that meat got on that piece of, disgusting plastic they serve it on. I guess as I kind of was vegetarian before I got into hunting, and I got so frustrated with the quality of the meat and the expense, having been very privileged to have homegrown, home-killed beef, pork and sheep my whole life. And, I guess I got a hunger for it. And, I really just, I'd like to know where everything I eat comes from at the end of the day. We really live off a lot of venison and a lot of greens that I grow, and everything else is locally sourced where possible.
So you were a vegetarian because of the quality?
Yeah, for a very small time. But yes, I would be quite happy.
Like 2 days?
No, it was probably a bit longer than that. But I mean, I would just go without meat because, probably because I was spending all my money on wine and didn't want to spend it on meat. And I was in my 20s. I enjoyed making vegetarian dishes, big delicious pastas or bean dishes, and they filled me up and kept my motor turning, and I would prefer that to then buying some steak from the butcher who I'd get it home and it didn't feel right. It wasn't the quality I was used to, I guess. I'm a bit of a spoiled little brat. But I do buy meat from a butcher locally now, but I'm very, very picky. Like, I struggle to buy it online. I'd rather see the meat, go into the homegrown butcher in Kurupuni in Masterton or the Greytown butcher, and get a nice bit of ribeye or something like that. But
and the connection between the wine and the food. Tell us about that connection.
Well, because it's my preferred beverage, and because of its ability to express a place and a season, I feel like it's the most natural beverage if you're going to have an alcohol. And through my hospitality days, I think that wine pairing mentality of matching dishes and giving people an experience is sort of hung in there. So I like to think about a wine in terms of aromatics and textures and what it might pair with in terms of food, to bring a more layered experience. not just something to drink before or after a meal. Like, I'm very much someone who'll sip wine through while I'm eating and try and bring it all together.
And the food situation we have, not just New Zealand, but people are quite disconnected with their food. Any thoughts on what you want to do in that space?
Well, I've been accepted as a kaitaki, so a young leader for Eat New Zealand, which is a very important kaupapa that I'm fully supporting, I have done, and now to be a part of that group of people who are a really wide range of, from nutritionists through to fishers, through to farmers and grain farmers, just trying to push that story, and Angela Clifford, who's the CEO of that, is a really driven person, and she's amazing. And there's this dream and idea that food accessibility, we're a couple of islands in this bottom of the South Pacific with incredible resources, amazing kaimoana, amazing soils south of Auckland and other places that grow incredible vegetables. And people can't get it direct, and so much of it's exported. You try and find out from your local fish and chip shop where that fish is from. They won't know. And that's appalling for a nation surrounded by ocean. And we export billions, so much. And it's a tragedy that people in Aotearoa cannot enjoy this themselves. So I think the whole idea behind Eat New Zealand is making people aware and connecting them back to it, making sure that they ask these questions, and just trying to change where it's at, I guess. And from my perspective as a winemaker, I'm kind of keen to tell a different story about wine and share my experience with wine and food with that group, see what I can bring to the table. I don't know where it's going to lead, but it's there's a big hui in November that I'm going down to Christchurch for, and it's I went to the hui in Wellington last year, and it was so inspiring, and it was connecting people all throughout the country who are super passionate about what they're doing, whether they're beekeepers or whatever, and getting people to experience what they're offering or get it direct, and form that connection that we've all got, but not everyone has the ability to have as well. That would be nice.
It's interesting, there's 2 or 3 themes in there. There's a really interesting guy, Jannine Rickards, who is a well-known, acclaimed marketer and involved with farming indirectly, indirectly, he's farming up in north of Auckland. He gets very frustrated that New Zealand has mastered the art of selling more for less when it comes to food, and just going, we have totally missed the boat here, that we need to be producing less for more.
Yeah.
And as if I don't think a lot of farmers understand that they are part of the food industry.
Yeah, no, maybe not.
There's a disconnect there, and that and I've been involved in a lamb tasting exercise down south a few years ago, and it was a specialist lamb with high omega. Mm-hmm. And you know what? The farmers couldn't differentiate their lamb with other lamb. And winemakers could, easily. And I thought, this is really interesting that they were not, it was a giggle sitting down having this lamb tasting exercise. It wasn't there was no wonder, or it was quite interesting. Interesting. And they were production orientated, not food orientated.
Yeah. I've judged an A&P show for lamb as well. Fascinating. So interesting. different textures, the flavour profile,
huge
fat
range,
level,
huge range.
Yeah,
it's just, and this was high omega lamb. It's a stunning product, but they couldn't differentiate their lamb accurately between that and other lamb. And I thought, wow, that's something that, I don't know, going through Lincoln or whatever, that young farmers go, you know what, you need to get passionate about food because that's what you're about.
Yeah, totally.
So when you train to be a winemaker, where do you do that?
There's quite a few options. In New Zealand, there's Lincoln in Christchurch. There's Auckland University. I actually studied online. I did a postgraduate through EIT while I was working at Aotearoa-NZ. They were very supportive, family business, and I wanted to keep working and not just step out and go studying because I had a really good job and I wanted to keep my fingers in the pie, and it worked out pretty well. I mean, it was an intense few years, and I sort of studied later. I definitely come from a more practical perspective as opposed to the studious type. So, yeah, I mean, there's lots of options. Some people go to Australia, Roseworthy it was called. Now it's called Adelaide University, I think. And there's one in Wagga Wagga. Called Charles Stewart. But, yeah.
And what was it like going through that study? Did you get an essence that I'm good at this stuff?
I think it sort of reinforced that I wanted to continue in that direction of winemaking because all the dots could be linked, all of the practical side of it that I'd learned about could be connected with the scientific aspects of the lab work and the chemistry behind it, which is fascinating. And there's still much research about various aromas and certain varieties, and that's ongoing. So there's always something interesting in terms of papers to read. But yeah, I think it just reinforced that I wanted to continue with winemaking. Made sense.
Yeah.
Wasn't, because you can only work harvests around the world for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jannine, are there many Māori involved in making wine in New Zealand?
I don't really know the answer to that question, and I guess, not a lot, and I wonder if there's some kind of taboo, like, around alcohol, like it has done a lot of damage, and potentially, good question, Harv. I guess I'm really also only connecting with te ao Māori in more recent times. So I didn't get in the industry, like I was seeing myself as a sort of a bit of a Kiwi mix, and I'm still a Kiwi mix from many, many places, but it's more about connecting with the whole tikanga protocol, the whole way of thinking, which is different now. Yeah, I mean, Rochelle's fabulous.
Rochelle? Who's
She's
Rochelle?
the other female winemaker down at Marlborough.
Right.
She's a great girl. I probably should have more of a conversation with her about this because it's come up a few times lately. Yeah, maybe it's just culturally alcohol wasn't really in the world for our people, so yeah, I'm not sure.
Because it's interesting, when I listen to you talk about wine and food, I don't think about alcohol. I think taste.
Yeah.
Right? Now, of course, it's alcoholic, but I think it's taste and experience and the mix and all that sort of counts. It's quite interesting. So when I hear you talking, I'm not associating with alcohol at all.
Yeah, I know. I don't tend to either, but when I go to the doctors and they ask me how much I drink a week, and they're like, instead of drinks, alcohol. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah.
Do you think it gives you a unique angle?
It seems to be brought to the table a lot more, but for me, I'm more about just making honest wines that are a reflection of me, and I'm just me. I'm not trying to represent.
So I've got to ask a question because you've opened up the door for that. So an expression of you.
Yeah.
Who are you? What's that? what's that expression?
A little bit wild. A little bit different. Layered. Complex. Maybe.
Maybe. Yes. Layered, complex.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
What was it? Quirky? No. I think.
Wild, complex.
Complex.
Yeah.
Layered.
Honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be the main ones, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you're making wine, that's what's going on inside you.
Well, I don't know if it's going on inside me. It's just something I think about when I think about a wine that satisfies me. Like, I want it to have multiple layers. I want to build something that is intriguing and textured and makes you go back and you think about it. And, like a lot of my blends are a bit different. They're not showcasing a site necessarily because I don't have my own site. They're just built a little whare that's built, and then you put the roof on and windows in, and it's not your normal.
Yep, not your normal. So, tell me about Mick the pig hunter. How did it go?
Mick the hunter. Oh well, I mean, we're now, happy owners of this property, and we live together, and he's amazing actually. He's very patient with me when I keep overcommitting to things, and I'm a very busy I like to put my hand up and say yes and get involved and work within the community, and he's quite different. He has been a self-employed builder, and he goes hunting on the weekend. That's what he's done, and so we're kind of coming together from a very different kind of place, and he does get frustrated with me when I say that I'm doing something else on the weekend. He's a bit older than me, quite a bit older than me. He's had a few accidents, hunting related, so he's not working anymore. He's banged his head many times, so he suffers from fatigue and headaches with that acquired brain injury. But he's really amazing. Like, I come home every day and the place is immaculate. The dogs have been looked after. There's usually dinner on the stove. He's building our deck at the moment. He's got quite a list of things to do. And he'll get there. But he's trained me up, basically. He's taught me so much, and now he lets me go out and look for deer. He's much more successful. I call him the sniper. He's head and neck shots. He's like, he doesn't fuck around. He's incredible. And I'm a long way. I'm still a novice. I'm still the apprentice.
Right.
But he gives me the chance because he's too fatigued normally. And get out there, girl, and have a go.
and you are the mother of 3 pig dogs.
Yeah. They're dicks, but I've taken them out 4 times in the last 4 weeks. So it's been good for everyone to be back on the hill on that mission. 2 of them are pups from the main bitch, and they've got a bit of greyhound in them. They're really fast. They're a bit crazy. So we've been waiting for them to mature a bit, but I think we just need to use them. Yeah, and they love it.
Are all 3 fast dogs, or have you got 1 big dog?
They're all pretty small dogs. They're pretty more sort of bailers than holders, although they would hold, definitely.
Yeah.
Rabbit, the dog Rabbit, the mum. She's pretty experienced, but she's sort of been on a long vacation. She had a fall down a cliff as well. Not the same cliff Mick fell down, but a different one. And the other dog that was with her died, and she survived, but I don't know if she's bounced back, from that accident.
Yeah, look, it's the little I've done. I just cannot get over how rugged it is, because with the adrenaline and the chase, and you end up in places go, oh crap, this is not good. Yeah, and it's quite precarious because the pigs seem to run to places that are really inaccessible. Yeah, it's all part of the game. Does Mick have your love of food as well?
He certainly did. He has. He kind of got my attention with his cooking, like rolled wild pig roast. I'm very good at that. I think he wooed me with the whitebait fritters that he'd caught. Did he? Yeah. They got you. Yeah, because we were hunting buddies, and then we became a bit more than that. But I took off on an adventure to Europe and lived in France, and then moved down south, and we had a few years apart. And then when I moved back to the Wairarapa, I called him up and I said, "Hey Mick, I'm back in the region. Do you want to catch up and go for a hunt?" And
one thing led to another.
Yeah, when I moved back in 2017. So yeah.
So coming back to this, Eat New Zealand, is that what it's called? Yeah. So what's being involved in that, what's the success look like for that venture?
I think that the mission would be to, I think they're working on it, getting something in front of Parliament to really draw attention to the importance of food tourism and food experiences in this country, really showcasing what a special, unique place we have, what incredible abundance, and make sure that we install processes or a way of thinking that it is maintained, for the long journey, not just all about now, which is unfortunately how a lot of things are run.
Yep.
So making sure that we have all of this abundance for a long period of time, for generations to come, and have it accessible to Kiwis, because we can have great product and export it overseas, and a few people make a lot of money, but if they then come to New Zealand and see that our own people can't access that stuff, I mean, what kind of story are we trying to tell there with that?
It's a bullshit story.
Yeah. So, and
the locally grown food supplies, is that something that's spinning your wheels as well?
Definitely. Before I sort of had Mick build my little raised vegetable plot, I was sourcing from a local CSA, community shared agricultural system, and so you just put in some money and you get a box, and it's local organic veg weekly, can be whatever's in season, because if you're not eating seasonally, then you're disconnected from your food.
Yep.
And if you're disconnected from your food, you're disconnected from the land and who you are. That's how I see it a little bit. And so, there's some incredible produce in most regions in New Zealand. You just got to go to your local farmers market. There's with platforms like social media and Instagram and all that, like you can easily find and connect with people doing cool things. Wairarapa's going off at the moment. It's exciting. There's people growing interesting mushrooms, microgreens, several different organic farms trying to, set up businesses, or are setting up businesses doing veggie boxes and things, so that you can have that consistent supply and you don't have to go to the supermarket and try and look for what's New Zealand grown. And something that's been sitting on the shelf or in transport for a long time. It's much fresher. It's much more direct. And you're supporting a small family probably,
And sometimes you can do it yourself.
That's right, yeah. My veggie garden's been more successful than I thought, actually, over winter. I'm very pleased with the amount of green matter that we've been able to put on our table.
And look, it's interesting because the whole food security thing, right, which is a big deal, becomes a whole lot more robust when you're not having to worry about supply chains and weather in other regions and this because the thing with so many vegetables, you have this boom bust thing. They oversupply, that just gets wasted, or just turned back into the soil, which is fine. But you get these huge.
So much wastage.
Yeah.
One of the other kaitaki, I haven't met her yet, but we've got a WhatsApp chat. She's based in Auckland, and her mission is to redistribute food that would normally be put to waste.
Yep.
And connect with people who can brew beer out of it or preserve it or, make it accessible.
The figures out of the States, and they think they're the same here, the figures out of the States are that 40% of processed food ends up in landfill.
That's a disgrace, isn't it?
And they say that's the figures, they think the figures are pretty much the same here. And you just go, producing methane. Right? So it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
And you just go, that is just really poor supply chains and all that disconnection stuff going on.
Yeah. And we've sort of seen it with the recent lockdown in Auckland when a few of the supermarket chains, had staff infected, had to close down. I think that must have put on quite a bit of pressure. And there must have been a serious amount of waste involved with that too. Distribution would have been pretty tricky, I imagine. And
there are networks now. I mean, there's the New Zealand Food Network that set up last year, which is doing a great job based in Auckland and I think in other depots, and so they can transport large quantities between the food networks, which is very cool. However, locally grown, I think, the thing that gets under my skin that's been wonderful is to see Jamie Oliver come out this week about the McDonald's situation, just going, the food at McDonald's is not nutritious.
Yeah, cool. I missed that, but I was appalled when the radio presenters were saying, when lockdown in Auckland went to level 3 and what are you in favour of, McDonald's or KFC? And I'm like, you couldn't freaking pay me to eat either of those.
Yep.
It's just empty, soulless
shit.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. And anyway, so Jamie Oliver's come out, and I think McDonald tried to sue him, and he's won, and he's basically saying the food you produce has no nutritional value. And
awesome.
And it's interesting because I think the French kept McDonald's out of there for a long time, but I think they're in there now. But, and it's just, that sort of stuff, we have got to push back on that and go, what, this shit's just is going to, people are concerned about whether you get vaccinated or not vaccinated, this and that, but they'll eat fucking McDonald's.
Yeah.
And go, that stuff will kill you over a long period of time, one way or another.
Totally.
It's classic.
It's ridiculous, but yeah.
So what are you doing anything locally with the food or any plans to develop that yourself locally?
I'm kind of definitely, I've always had it in the back of my mind that Huntress wouldn't just be about wine. It would be about food as well. And I have this idea in my brain that I'd love to have evolve into an actual part of the business, which is, like a permaculture-based property where you could come and visit and have an experience and have like a workshop day and our friends do this down south, Angela, in fact. You're being fed from product from that land. So you're the meat on the table, the homemade cheese, the vegetables, everything is right there. And you can share your skills and knowledge on whether it's growing vegetables or how to dispatch a pig or how to skin and break it down. Because it's incredible how many hunters I've met who don't actually even do that. They get it taken to the butcher.
Yep.
I'm like, it's actually a really simple skill once you do it for a few times.
Yep.
And yeah.
The hardest part's already done, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's something I am hoping to do in about 2 weeks' time up in New Plymouth. And I've been trying to think of the guy's name. He was on Country Calendar 12 months ago. And
Roebuck Farm?
There you go. Thank you.
I did that. I went and did a market gardening course at their place last year.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So inspiring and so open with his knowledge. And yeah, him and Tanya are really driven, doing such good things for Taranaki.
And the place produces a phenomenal amount of food off a very, very small area.
Yeah. Intensive gardening.
Yeah.
It's totally possible. There's no reason why every small property in Auckland couldn't have some form of small patch intensive gardening, growing basic vegetables for themselves in their backyard.
Because he told me, I talked to him on the phone, he told me what he earned off that. And he said it, how long it's taken to get up and going, like all things do. And they are, the guy is phenomenally driven to do this. But anyway, so I'm hoping to go along and because I know he's open, you can go along like, I'm just going to do the tourist thing. Right?
Yeah, open farm day, yeah.
Yeah, right. But the depth of knowledge he has is quite phenomenal.
Yeah, he's a big leader in terms of that, and he's done, travelled a lot and worked with a guy in the States who's legendary in terms of that kind of farming, market gardening. And he's right into regenerative farming and rotational grazing and all that kind of important stuff.
Yeah, because
sheep. He has his own sheep, which we had for lunch, and it was just the most delicious.
Yeah. And look, it's interesting. I got into regenerative agriculture because of lamb, and I had poo-hooed it for 7 years. I've written about this, and I'm a very slow learner sometimes, and this guy had produced this lamb high in omega through regenerative farming, and I thought, there's no way you can do that. That's, I know what it takes to do that. You've got to have big genetic programs and so forth. And it was the experience I had at the Wine Awards going, you Dick, if you're a winemaker, you go, send me some, I'd love to taste that. So I thought, right, I'll take that on and I'll ask him to send some up. And so he sent this up, and Kate and I cooked this enough lamb for 2 nights, right? And we're not big meat eaters, but we cooked enough for 2 nights, and we're going to have that other stuff cold the next night. Well, we ate the whole lot on one night, and it was just so good. And you could feel the omega fat at the top of your mouth, and the taste was just extraordinary, and it was so succulent, and it was some of the best lamb I've ever tasted. And it was frozen, right? So it's sent up frozen, and I thought, I'm missing something here. And that was from a regenerative program that produced that food.
Awesome.
And I thought, I need to get my shit together. And so that was 4 years ago. And we're now, fully into the regenerative thing. And it takes a lot of learning and a lot to unlearn, because I was taught in the old mechanism of chemical farming and control and so forth. This regenerative thing takes a lot more skill and depth of knowledge, I think, on what is going on in the system. Yeah. But the product is vastly different. Yeah.
It's like anything, just to work on, to change the way you think about something. It takes a while.
Jannine, to wrap this up, what is anything we've left out?
I guess one thought that popped into my head, and a main reason for joining this kaupapa, or sharing knowledge and trying to connect people with food and the land, is like, it's also, I'm definitely thinking about the future generations, like my niece and nephew, and what the world's going to be like for them. And we don't have the farm anymore. They've got a very different upbringing with just my sister. And, I want to make sure that I'm there in a healthy way to be supportive, back up, and that they've got that availability of good food around them to, feed their soul and their bodies. Yeah. So thinking beyond our current time. And that's been one big learning from connecting with my whakapapa and learning and understanding more about te ao Māori, is that I think I've lived my whole 40 years to date as a very sort of, I'm on a pathway, I'm achieving all these things, I'm ticking all these goals, but it's all been kind of a little bit ego-driven, and now my understanding is, connecting with the Hauriki Marae and Martinborough, is that it's really important to have a different outlook on how you see the world and be a part of something bigger and be connected with the people around you a lot more, if that makes sense. It's not about you, it's about the bigger picture. Yeah, it's been cool. Makes you think about what you're doing differently.
Do you think that's connected to you connecting back with your whakapapa?
Yeah, I do.
It's definitely linked to that. Huh?
Yeah, and just the whole, I haven't been for a while, but a Monday night class at UCOL, and, it's all pronunciation and structures of speaking te reo, but at the end of the class, two classes come together and it's open forum talking about tikanga. You can ask anything, and some really interesting conversations come out of that, and you almost learn more from all that storytelling than you do, the basics. It's cool. And there's so many incredible resources out there now. That recent week of Te Wiki or Te Reo is just phenomenal energy coming out of that. I love listening to RNZ going to work now, and just the pronunciation and the inclusion, the bilingual speaking is freaking awesome. It's good. It's good for the country. I think it's good for everybody.
Second conversation I've had on this topic today. It is. It's good for everybody. Yeah. And there is nothing to be scared about it, because the thing with the Māori culture is about sharing.
Yeah.
It's not about controlling. Jannine, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing this, and good luck with the Huntress.
Thank you.
And shout out to Mick. Will Mick listen to this?
He might do, yeah.
He might do?
He was laughing this morning because I was in stuff, and he was like, "Oh, what are you in the news again?" It's like, hey.
Look at me go.
He doesn't read it, but he hears about it secondhand.
Yeah.
He's always got his eyes and ears open.
Well, if Mick gets to this, shout out to Mick, the intrepid pig hunter. And Jannine, good luck with the next part of your journey. And I look forward to seeing where this develops. And the Eat New Zealand thing is, I think, really interesting. Really interesting. I'd love to see New Zealand become a place where people associate it with fine food, of different food and wonderful wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Harv.
Pleasure. You've just been listening to an episode of Stuff That Matters Now, brought to you by Collective Intelligence. I hope you enjoyed listening to the fun stuff, the rugged stuff, and the complete stuff-ups that have helped this particular Collective Intelligence member evolve while making the world a better place. Do check out our Stuff That Matters Now podcast series on your favourite podcast provider or visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz to get links to new episodes. Contact us if you want to learn more about how we can help you evolve yourself and others. Thanks for listening.